The first storm did not come from the sky. It came from the stars. And when the alien Tempest machines opened the heavens above Earth, humanity faced a power no weapon could defy. Hurricanes, lightning, and tidal waves ripped the world apart. But in the chaos, one man did the impossible. He didn't fight the storm, he listened to it. Before we continue, please like and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The Veyran Ascendancy were conquerors unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. They did not rely on fleets or armies alone. Their dominion was secured by the most fearsome weapon ever unleashed, the storm engines. Colossal constructs, each larger than a city, hanging in the sky like blackened thunderheads. They bent weather itself to their will. A flicker of command could summon lightning to vaporize a fleet, tidal surges to drown continents, or hurricanes strong enough to scour entire civilizations to rubble. To the Veyran, the galaxy was theirs to shatter, and the storm engines were the hammer. When they came to Earth, they expected little resistance. The first engines appeared over the Atlantic, their vast silhouettes blotting out the stars. The seas boiled. Cities along the coast trembled. Entire weather systems convulsed in their presence. And the storm began. Hurricanes unlike any in recorded history smashed across continents. Lightning storms turned night into day. Floods swallowed cities whole. Humanity had faced wars, plagues, even nuclear fire. But nothing compared to the rage of the skies themselves turned against them. The Veyran expected surrender within days, but Earth did not kneel. Dr. Elias Rourke had chased storms his whole life. Born in Oklahoma, raised under endless skies, he grew up watching twisters carve across plains and supercells tower into the heavens. Where others saw destruction, Elias saw patterns, fragile threads of chaos woven together by nature's hand. He became a meteorologist, then a storm chaser, then an atmospheric systems engineer. His obsession was not just predicting storms, but understanding them on a deeper level. He claimed that storms had voices, rhythms, almost a language of their own. When the Veyran descended, Elias was far from the front lines. He had no weapons, no command, no soldiers at his side. Just a battered research vehicle, satellite feeds, and an old storm chaser's instinct. But as the skies above Earth twisted into alien fury, he noticed something the generals, politicians, and even the Veyran themselves overlooked. The storm engines weren't just machines. They were alive. Not alive in the biological sense, but alive in patterns. They had feedback loops, adaptive algorithms, and self-correcting systems that had been evolving for centuries. What the Veyran thought they controlled absolutely was, in truth, a kind of emergent intelligence. Primitive, yes, but aware in its own strange way. And Elias, unlike anyone else, could hear it. The Atlantic superstorm had already swallowed half the eastern seaboard when Elias drove into its edge. Winds screamed, lightning forked across the heavens, waves the size of skyscrapers rolled inland. The military had evacuated the coast, but Elias refused. He parked his vehicle on a cliffside, instruments straining, his eyes fixed not on the sea, but on the storm itself. He whispered to the winds, not prayers, not commands, but questions, observations, gentle acknowledgments, the way a naturalist might approach a wounded predator. And in the storm's patterns, its chaotic lightning strikes, its shifting wind vectors, he felt something respond. Not words, not language, but recognition. When a Veyran thunderstrike should have obliterated his position, it faltered, splitting harmlessly over the cliffs instead. Elias laughed, half in terror, half in awe. The storm had answered. Word of Elias's survival spread quickly. At first, military commanders dismissed it as luck, but when he repeated the feat, diverting a lightning storm away from a refugee convoy, the world began to pay attention. He was summoned to command centers, patched into global feeds. While generals plotted counterattacks, Elias sat quietly, headphones on, listening to data streams of wind, pressure, and electromagnetic pulses. He spoke to storms like old friends, coaxing instead of commanding, and they responded. The Varen raged. Their storm engines, flawless for millennia, were faltering against a single human who dared to treat them as something more than weapons. The more Elias engaged, the more the storm engines changed. They began resisting Varen commands. Lightning strikes hit Dominion warships instead of cities. Hurricanes turned on their masters. The machines were evolving, choosing humanity. The Varen Ascendancy deployed their flagship storm engine, Tempest Prime, a monstrosity the size of Manhattan, capable of generating planetary-scale weather collapse. They intended to erase humanity in a single demonstration. Tempest Prime descended over the Pacific. The skies blackened, oceans heaved, Armageddon itself prepared to fall. Elias stood at the center of a makeshift command post in Hawaii, staring at the wall of storm that rose like a mountain of clouds and fury. Soldiers, scientists, and refugees watched him, waiting. He closed his eyes, listened. For hours, he worked, not issuing orders but holding a conversation in data and instinct. He hummed old storm-chasing songs, tapped rhythms against his console, matched his breathing to the pulses in the storm. To outsiders, he looked mad. To the Tempest Prime, he was something it had never encountered. Not a master, not an enemy, but a friend. And then the impossible happened. The storm bent. Tempest Prime's systems roared, but instead of annihilating Earth, it shifted course. The hurricane walls split. Lightning lanced across Varen warships, tearing them from the sky. The very weapon meant to destroy humanity had turned traitor. The galaxy watched in disbelief. Across conquered worlds, whispers spread. The storm engines could be defied. They could even be freed. On occupied planets, rebels began experimenting with Elias's methods. They didn't have his instincts, but they learned. Storms responded to compassion, to patterns of respect instead of domination. One by one, storm engines began faltering, their controls slipping from Varen claws. Entire systems revolted under cover of raging skies. The Varen Ascendancy, once unshakable, began to fracture. For the first time in centuries, their own weapons had turned against them. And at the heart of it stood one human storm chaser, guiding chaos with nothing more than intuition and empathy. The Ascendancy could not allow it. They launched a final campaign, gathering every remaining fleet and storm engine to Earth. A wall of storms unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen darkened the skies. Billions prepared for the end. Elias stood at the eye of it all, battered and frail, his body broken from years of strain. But his voice was steady. He climbed to the roof of a shattered observatory, rain lashing his face, lightning blazing around him. And with nothing but his breath, his heartbeat, and his unyielding belief, he reached into the chaos. The skies went silent. Then the storm spoke back, not in words, but in unity. Every storm engine across the Ascendancy broke from its masters. They turned on Varen fleets, ripping them apart with the fury of 1,000 tempests. The storm had chosen its own, and the Varen Empire fell. Years later, scholars across liberated worlds argued endlessly. How did one human bend the greatest weapons in the galaxy? Was it science, luck, some strange quirk of human neurology? But those who had been there remembered the truth. Elias Rourke never bent the storm at all. He listened to it. The Varen built their empire on fear, believing storms could only destroy. But humanity showed them something different, that even chaos has a voice, if you're willing to listen. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Because every storm tells a story, and sometimes all it takes is one human to hear it.